Mystics Prototype, The Book of Myrlin, Volume 1, by K. Young. Prologue, A Soul and a Goddess. What is a soul? Is it experience? What is a soul? Is it an individual? Is it that individual's experience? Or is it creativity? Is it one's creative experience? Perhaps it's dedication, unwavering devotion. Tell me, what is a soul? The question lingers on my mind. That's right, I'm an individual, but who was I? I concentrated on the thought and memories began to flood my mind. My form was incorporeal, however, I knew I still had a mind of my own. Despite that, I couldn't see, I couldn't talk, sleep, eat, I couldn't do anything but think to myself and ponder the same question, what is a soul? I had no concept of time in this place. Wherever I was, it was a dark, void-like space that seemed to lack any and everything that would make an individual comfortable. There was absolutely nothing here, and I, whoever I was in my previous life, felt it. That was until I felt something during one of my many rambling sessions, another presence. What is a soul, you ask? The voice chimed in my mind, a voice that was angelic, beautiful, mesmerizing, and completely hypnotic. Who's there? Is there someone else here with me? Do you know who I am? And can you please answer this question that's been bothering me since being here? What is a soul? I asked frantically. I didn't want to miss an opportunity to interact with someone in this void. One question at a time, I'll try to answer all your questions at once. In your former life, you dedicated yourself to go against the grain and carve out your own faith. The being's melodic voice, as beautiful as it was beginning to feel heavy in weight. It was your soul's desire, your soul's purpose, and you died feeling as though you weren't acknowledged. For that I apologize. Apologize? Why are you apologizing to me? Wait, the thoughts of my previous life once again began to flash in my mind. I recalled a life of a struggling man that had dreams of becoming a successful book publisher. The life was a sad one, filled with an emotional, lazy, irresponsible man who spoke nothing but empty promises, however, to counter his, rather my bad habits. I was what one would consider a jack of all trades. Music, creative writing, knowledge of the occult, the world. The information was boundless, and the driving force for all of it was a deity, the mother of all things. Your efforts weren't in vain, your dedication was not for nothing, the goddess stated. One such as I can only interact with their first follower. First follower, there was no possible way that I was the only follower this goddess ever had, or was it? Was it really possible that no one even acknowledged her as a goddess until I did? Yes, it is entirely possible, the goddess replied. And to answer this question you've been asking, what is a soul? To put it simply, it is a combination of things. One's own existence has its own perspective, their own personal experiences, boundless fields of imagination and creativity. In your own words, and surprisingly words that I cherish, a soul is the main character of one's own story. Do you remember saying that? She asked. At that moment, I realized something. I was starting to see a form of sorts. It was her form. The goddess was beautiful. She had ash crimson hair, deep ebony skin that appeared to have shimmering scales and fiery eyes. She approached me and stretched her hand out, and as if she willed it herself, I began to think clearly, and my identity was clear. I can remember who I was in my previous life, I thought. Memories of my previous life began to flood my mind with the addition to something akin to a physical body starting to form. I remembered the joys of creativity and culture, the world's music and understanding of abstract concepts. But the one thing that stood out from all those memories was the unwavering sense of devotion I felt when I thought of the mother of all things. Your devotion to me has not gone unnoticed. My subordinate Pandora and I have been keeping a close eye on you, the goddess echoed. Thank you for never losing faith in me, for being my first real follower, and as a supreme being, it's only right that I reward you. She embraced me, and I felt as though the form I had taken was completely relaxed, melted even. I didn't feel any pain, but it was difficult to move. But before I do so, I must warn you of what is to come. It seemed like what she had to say was important and troubling her. It would appear that the state that I'm in, as I am now expiring soon, meaning I'll likely go on a chaotic rampage. Her tone of voice still sounded troubled, yet the subject matter was delivered so casually I didn't know what to make of it. And to prepare you for that, I will send you to my realm, one of magic and under my absolute divine protection, even under the worst circumstances. Wherever you have to send me, I'll go. I remember how following you made me feel complete, I thought. But it wasn't necessarily a thought, more of a response back to the goddess. She gave me a gentle smile and pulled me into her embrace. I'm going to bless you with the ability to understand the language of the land you'll be reborn in. I felt my body grow heavier. In addition to that, I'm blessing you with a massive capacity for mana. You of all people will find this most useful, she snickered. Mana? I was in complete shock. However, I found it impossible to react to what she was saying. Everything began to grow darker and darker except the last thing I saw when reading the goddess's lips, Myrlin.
Chapter 1 New Game plus Ice Twyla Wilt Garyushi Wilt Manor, Garini, Garyudora, Ryudo Shangri-La, 7 Yangsari, 9.8 mil R6X, 24 days until the next rotation. The western continent of Shangri-La is steeped deep in tradition and history about the world we live in, the world of hTraé. Home to 5 continents, Visteria, home of the Beastmen, Dartania, land of the Dartani elves, Sida, where the descendants of the fairy race live. Then there's the birthland of the demons, Jigoku, just north of Shangri-La, the domain of dragons. I looked out my window and saw that snow blanketed the land, and although the night is peaceful, there is a mass of dark clouds that loom over the countryside. Greater forces are currently at work preparing for a shift in the current status quo, I thought to myself. My husband Kronos and I own a small manor outside the Garyudoran Empire that few people know about. He said that he didn't want too much attention or eyes on him, especially when I was expecting to have children soon. I sat in my nursery and began to rub my belly. Would you like to hear a story? I asked the child within my womb. I felt multiple kicks, and that let me know that I was on to something. Okay, long ago there lived a dragoness, the first witch, some called her, I began. Her primordial power could fracture the minds of even the mightiest of gods, I continued as I caressed my belly. She was known as the Reality Queen, warping the fabric of reality to her will. She gave life to the known world. All life, humanity, wildlife, and reality as we know it draws breath because of her. I continued to tell the tale. After time passed, the dragoness grew lonely. She would often see humans and their need to have offspring, and each day she contemplated the benefits of having children of her own. Until finally, one day, she had enough of her loneliness and created a new race of people, the Asura, beings created using DNA from the 4 cardinal races, the dragon race, demon race, fairy race, and a bit from the slime race. As I continued my story, I noticed the storm clouds that were brewing began to intensify. The Dragoness gave life to 7 Asura children, each inheriting a bit of her power. Having a mythical origin, the Asura race is naturally adept at manipulating mana and quickly understood their role in this world. Eventually, the Dragoness's 7 children grew into their own unique abilities, or signatures: time, space, chaos, death, life, sleep, and love. These 7 signatures are the building blocks of the Dragoness's abilities and are known as the aspects of reality. The Dragoness was finally happy with her life and the family she built. However, one day the Dragoness overextended herself, and as a result it caused a fissure in her mental state. My belly began to kick with frustration. I could tell the little one wasn't very fond of this part of the story. Her children, now fully grown Asura, saw their mother struggle and decided to take matters into their own hands. The eldest, Astaroth, gathered his siblings to devise a plan to end the Dragoness's suffering. Although the 7 Asura inherited the aspects of their mother's power, it was not enough to quell her rage. When all seemed at a loss, Astaroth's legendary time signature, Oracle, self-activated, and he foresaw a future where 7 of their ancestors will have the strength to soothe the Dragoness's rage. But before he could see which of their ancestors would have the power to do so, the Dragoness placed a curse on her children. For 2 generations, the lords that are to inherit the aspects of my power shall perish gruesomely and mercilessly by the hand of chaos. However, due to the split in her mental state, she also gave her children a blessing to act as the antithesis to the curse. After 2 generations, the lords that are to inherit the aspects of my power shall also inherit the previous power as well. This was all she could do to aid the Asura in their generational battle. Until the day her children's children will be able to stop her, she will continue her rampage across the cosmos. There was a knock at the door, followed by its opening. It was my dear husband, Oladunosuke. You know, I heard babies can hear about everything outside of the womb, so telling our unborn child scary stories will affect him. Don't tell me you believe that stuff, do you? Twee, we went over this. The 6 are the strongest Asura lords Avalon has ever had, even surpassing the 1st generation by leaps and bounds. I furrowed my brow as he kissed my forehead. Yes, dear, that might be the case, I started. However, my love, shouldn't we pass on the stories that were told to us as children? It's not as though I'm doubting your strength. I just want to give our child something to strive towards. Compelling, Oladunosuke sucked his teeth in content. I suppose if it can't be helped, the story is just too eerie for my liking. Kind of like it's foreseeing my demise. I pulled my husband closer to caress his dark red clay skin. I would never wish death upon you, my beloved. I'm sorry for upsetting you. I just wanted to give our son a story to cling to before he's born. As I began to stand from my chair, I felt a heaviness drop in my abdomen. Oladunosuke? Yes, my love, my husband asked softly. It's time. My water had broken, and there was a pool of fluid beneath my feet. Oladunosuke cradled me as he took me to my bed. Rubella! Oladunosuke cried. Please gather the other midwives. Twee has gone into labor. In the doorway stood one of our attendants, Rubella les Fleurs Précieuses, a night-skinned demon the same as me. Originally, she, along with her sisters and myself, were from the demon continent of Jigoku. However, once I fell in love with Oladunosuke, I'd requested to have a small staff of familiar faces. I was lucky enough to have attendants that were related to me. My cousins, Rubella, Marigold, Lilac, Tanya, and their youngest sister, Jade. She was still young and training to become a proper maid. With haste, my lord. Rubella bowed and bolted down the hall to gather the necessary items for the delivery. Upon her return, she was accompanied by the rest of her sisters and a note-taking Jade. Now pay attention, Jade, Rubella lectured. Childbirth is no walk in the park. You must always be prepared for the worst, even if things are looking their best. Right, Jade began scribbling in her notebook. There were so many people in the room and so many noises, I could barely keep my outburst to myself. By the hand of Tiamat, why is everyone being so dim-witted? I didn't need a special skill or signature to read the expression on my husband's face. Dim-witted? Like I didn't just call in the cavalry. Geez, marry a demon queen, they said, is likely what he's thinking. As Oladunosuke sulked in the furthest corner in the room, our attendants began to position me for my delivery. The night was long, rather the pain elongated the time, and it felt as though 1 second lasted an entire cosmic rotation. Is this what the healer meant when they said I'd have an abnormal pregnancy? You're doing excellent, milady, Lilac coached. Now give me a deep breath and poosh. Perhaps I can be of assistance? Oladunosuke piped up. Speak when spoken, too. I let out a monstrous roar towards my beloved. It wasn't intentional. It's just that my nerves are working overtime and I'm being overstimulated by all his incessant questioning. She's not normally like this, Jade whispered to my husband. Cousin Twyla is usually more soft-spoken and well-mannered, so whatever she's feeling right now is what's causing her to act like that. Ah, I see, Oladunosuke smirked. Just the beauty of childbirth. After all, the more pain, the greater the gain. The silence was deafening, and every woman's eyes in the room widened and locked onto my oath of a husband. No one says that, Lord Kronos, Tanya interjected. The other maids all looked around at each to validate their sister's statement. I'd have to agree, my lord. I'm sorry, but I've never heard that phrase before, squeaked Marigold. You know nothing of childbirth, do you, my lord? Rubella interrogated. Each question is like a dagger, plunging deeper and deeper into my very being. Olodunosuke cried on his knees, much to Jade's amusement. You sure did fumble the ball there, didn't you, my lord? Jade gave a toothy smile to my husband and helped him get back up to his feet. Oh, will you stop being so dramatic and come hold your child? I asked with a raised brow. Finished? Olodunosuke asked. Already? That was quick? Like I said, Rubella huffed as she finished gathering the soiled towels, you know nothing of childbirth. As she and her sisters finished tidying up the nursery, Jade and Marigold escorted me and my baby to the baths to get cleaned. Although the delivery was a success and without complications, I felt as though I was still with child. After the bath, I changed into a simple kimono and lied in bed with my new child. You are perfect, I told him. The baby boy resembled his father, having the same dark red clay skin and pointed dragon man ears. However, he'd also inherited my golden eyes, and his hair was midnight purple. You look just like your father. There was a knock at the door, followed by its opening. It was Olodunosuke. Twyla, my dear, how are you feeling? We are well, I acknowledged. Come here. I'd like you to meet your son. Olodunosuke looked around the room before approaching us. If I had to guess, he was probably keeping his eyes out for Rubella and her sharp tongue. Wow, he said as he held our son. We made him? You and I, we made this? Yes, dear, I chuckled. We made him, and he looks exactly like you. Olodunosuke was excited. However, he knew to be gentle with the baby. Have you decided on a name? I looked out the window to observe the blanket of snow that covered the estate. I'd like for our children to have common names before they grow into their imperial names. The tension was thick. My husband had only just ascended to the Garyudoran throne, a responsibility left by his father, Platinum Dragon Emperor Samael. Within the continent of Shangri-La, one can find a myriad of different countries. Nations ran by forest ogres, dwarven giants, beastmen, all alike. However, located in the west resides the Ryudo, or the Royal Dragon's domain. This region of the continent is mostly populated by a race of beings like my husband called dragon men. The region holds two nations, Garyudora in the west and Myryudora in the south. Olodunosuke and I found our residence in the former since he's become emperor. I see, Olodunosuke sighed. Well, before Lord Second passed, he'd asked me to name my firstborn after him. I squinted my eyes at my husband before pouting. Well, it's going to have to be his middle name. I've already come up with a strong and wise name for him. I reached for my newborn, a name that will surely be destined for greatness. Which is? Olodunosuke asked with a glance. Myrlin, I sang to my beautiful baby boy, and as if he'd been called that name for years, my baby opened his eyes and began to stare deep into mine. Why, hello, are you finally awake? Did you sleep well, my little murmur? His eyes were a vibrant gold that had a glimmer of curiosity, and when he grabbed my finger, I could feel the future power he would wield. This is power? Is this the same feeling that Olodunosuke's mother felt when she gave birth to him and his siblings? That is a beautiful name, Olodunosuke said as he sat next to me, cradling me in his embrace. Myrlin Samael Wilt. We don't have to raise our children as royals. Instead, when the time comes, we'll let them choose the life they'd wish to live. I wasn't surprised by his statement, for as long as I've known Olodunosuke, he's never been too fond of the duties of being a ruler. However, I believe with the emergence of his offspring, he's more inclined to take up the responsibility. With this child in our arms marks a brand world and adventure for Olodunosuke and I can only pray to our Great Mother that Myrlin will find his place in this world.
Chapter 2, New Game Plus 2. Myrlin Samael Wilt Manor, Guarini Gurudora, Ryudo Shangri-La, 7 Yangsari 9.8 mil R6X. As I regained my focus, I saw a breathtaking sight. It was a woman, but not just any kind of woman. Her skin was that of the night sky. There were stars on her skin that flickered and glowed to express her joy. Who is this woman? Was the only thing I could think of. Oh, hello. Are you finally awake? Did you sleep well, my little murmur? I looked up to the woman. Her voice was just as angelic as the goddess, and her eyes were that of illustrious full moons. "That is a beautiful name," a man with dark red clay skin and pointed ears announced, as he sat on the bed next to the woman. "Myrlin Samael Wilt. Are these supposed to be my parents?" I pondered. I know the goddess said that the world she was sending me was going to have magic, but I didn't expect to be born by the literal night sky. I felt an itch on my ear and went to scratch it, and to my surprise, my ears were pointed, just like the man's ears, so I'm an elf, huh? I wasn't too sure where exactly I found myself. However, it's not like I can do anything about that, considering I'd just been reborn in this world. The two adults continued their conversation as I observed my surroundings, so judging by the setup in this room, I'd have to say that we're some sort of noble family. Either that, or these two are high-ranking adventurers, I theorized. Even more important, what kind of magic is out there in this new world? Will it be like my favorite stories? What wonders does this place have for me? As I pondered the new life I would be leading, I hadn't realized that my mother was stroking my hair, causing me to fall into a deep sleep. This is the life I have to live now. A soul with a second chance at life. In gamer terms, we call this New Game Plus, starting over with all the memories and skills from when you completed the game. Except in this case, it's more like New Game Plus, New Game. I've got experience from my last game or past life, and I'm in a completely new game or life. This was going to have to get some getting used to, but for now, I think I'd just like to take advantage of these people's hospitality. 1 year later, Wilt Manor, Garini, Garyudora, Ryudo Shangri-La, 23 Yindower, 1R7X. About a year has passed since I'd been reborn in this new realm, and I've learned a lot. For starters, my name is Myrlin Samael Wilt. I'm the firstborn son of Kronos and Twyla Wilt, an interracial couple. You see, my father is a dragon man. He's strong and powerful, just like an actual dragon. And my mother, she's called a night-skinned demon. I learned that the world is based in magic, and there are a multitude of different races that call this place home. From what I've gathered, I live on the dragon continent of Shangri-La, and there are 4 other continents, each with a myriad of cultures. I do anticipate having to venture into their unknown someday, but for now, I will stick to the mysteries before me. I'm rather fond of this new life, and although it's only been a year, I've made strides of my own, yet boy can fucking walk now. This development was one that I so desperately needed. Although being carried around does have its perks, there's nothing like moving one's legs towards freedom. With my stumpy little legs, I ran through every hallway in the manor, looking and searching. That was until I found what I was looking for. I opened the door leading into the nursery. "Mama, mini baby wa okitaka, ooh, okita, okita," I shouted in excitement. I'd found my new siblings. They were a pair of twins, Minerva and Monspeed. Minerva was lying on her back and turned her head to the right to look at me. There was something about her that felt familiar, and I couldn't put my finger on it. So instead, I reached my hand out to hers and firmly grasped it. "Keep you safe, Nerva." Did I just? I pondered. That had been the first time that I spoke English since being in this world, and for some reason, I only had the desire to do so when I was around my sister. Mother approached me from behind and smiled brightly. "Good morning. How is my beautiful Princess Minerva?" She picked Minerva up from her bassinet, and the 3 of us made our way outside to the manor's courtyard, where we were soon met by our father and Rubella. Oh, by our great mother Tiamat, my beautiful empress, carved from the night skies, Twyla, my beloved. Father began to swoon. And our wonderful and beautiful children, Myrlin and Minerva. Oh, how I love you all. The adults continued with their conversation as Rubella grabbed and tended to Minerva. I still think it's a little weird that I was able to speak English all of a sudden. Could Nerva also be a reincarnation? 5 years later, Wilt Manor, Garini, Garidora, Ryudo Shangri-La, 15 Yindower, 6R7X. It's been about 6 years since I'd been reincarnated, and I couldn't help but notice that I still resemble a toddler. Perhaps it has to do with being non-human. Moreover, I, along with my siblings, Minerva and Monspeed, don't appear to look like our mother, only our father, which I found to be odd, considering the features on our mother. I wonder if there's a book in the library about genetics or something that would help me understand why I don't look like my mother. I'd finally made my way to the manor's library. There was a massive door in its entryway that, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't force it open. This fucking blows. I was starting to get agitated. That was until a smiling Jade came to my rescue. "You trying to go read a book, Murmur?" Jade asked with a raised brow and a smile. "Books?" I had an extremely limited vocabulary to speak with. If I knew anyone that knew I were reborn here, I'm sure they'd get a kick out of seeing me like this. "That's right," Jade chuckled. "Let Big Sister Jade help you so you can explore." She opened the door, and I was met with, quite honestly, the largest library I'd ever seen. It was like something out of a movie. There were at least 7 floors, each stuffed packed with books. My eyes gleamed at the sight of all this knowledge before me. I looked to Jade, and she flashed me a smile and motioned me to go inside, much to my delight. The library was enormous. I don't think there's enough time in the world that could allow me to read all these books. My enjoyment was short-lived, however. Upon opening any of the books, I found that I was in fact illiterate. Milady said that she'd give me the ability to understand the language, but completely forgot the part about being able to read it. There was a dark silhouette that loomed over me, and when I turned around I saw my mother holding a sleeping Monspeed, along with Jade holding Minerva's hand. Mother smiled at me before asking, "Would you like to hear a story?" "Books?" I asked, tilting my head. My mother chuckled and simply repeated, "Yes, dear, books." She sat us down in a small section of the library that resembled a lounge, and what was even more strange was the furniture. "Are those beanbag chairs?" Mother brought us to said beanbag chairs. I really didn't know what to make of this situation. I'd known I was reborn in a new world, one with magic and fantastical creatures. However, I've only experienced the latter and still have my doubts regarding the former. It wasn't like I didn't believe the goddess, but since being here, the only jaw-dropping thing I've seen was my mother, and as beautiful as she is, I was hoping there were more wonders this world had to offer. "Kids, there's a story that I used to tell each of you while you were still resting in my tummy," Mother began. "The story of a great witch, a dragoness, the story of our goddess, Tiamat." With those words spoken, I was immediately transfixed on every word my mother said. And it wasn't just me. When I looked over to Minerva, she too was in awe by Mother's story. Long ago, before time, space, and reality as we know it, there was chaos. Mother weaved a beautiful and grandiose tale that completely immersed me. And the one that ruled over that chaos was a dragoness. She's known to have ash crimson-colored hair, deep mahogany skin, and with fierce fire-red eyes. She was the first being to exist in the material world, and when she wanted to be free of the chaos, she made this realm her home and called it hTraé. With each word my mother spoke, I felt a pressure exude from one of the aisles in the library. "That's weird. I feel something. It feels like it's calling out to me, but where is it coming from?" "This land that we call home, the Ryudo, was named after her son, Ryushi, the cardinal dragon lord," Mother continued, "a powerful dragon that ruled over the entire continent with an iron fist. As the story went on, we'd learned that there were a total of 4 cardinal races, as well as 4 cardinal lords. Ryushi was the second cardinal lord, making him one of, if not the strongest. However, although times were prosperous, Mother's voice grew suspenseful, that didn't stop chaos from coming and disturbing our great mother's peace. A dark, empty void made its presence known to the new denizens of the realm, an Umbrazin, a malevolent force of nature. According to Mother, Lady Tiamat and the Umbrazine clashed for eons, until one day, mysteriously, both Lady Tiamat and the Umbrazine vanished, leaving the realm a desolate wasteland. And it wasn't until Lord Astaroth and his 6 Asuran siblings came back from the material world to restore the realm back to its former glory. As the story continued, I felt that pressure grow even heavier from the book aisle. The pressure was hypnotic and alluring, drawing me to it. Like a moth to a flame, my attention craved whatever mystery was pushing out that aura. When I finally came to, I noticed something was off. "Hello, can anyone hear me?" I looked to my family, and they were completely frozen, not like encased in ice or anything, but more like they were frozen in time. Nerva, Speed, can you guys hear me? I asked as I waved my hand in their faces, but there was no reaction from either of them. Upon further examination of my surroundings, it would appear that the room's color had been completely drained. It looked almost like an old 20th century Western. Well, sitting around isn't going to answer my questions, I said aloud. Wait, am I speaking English, like from my mouth? Whoa, trippy. It was just like that time when I was a year old. I'd spoken to Minerva, and she looked like she could understand me, but I was having a hard time understanding why she wasn't able to move as freely as me. I stood up from the lounge area and began to explore the library for that presence I felt earlier. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it felt similar to the goddess's aura, and if she's here, then there are a few questions that I'd like for her to answer. The aura was even stronger now that I'd gotten up to explore. So strong even, I was able to pinpoint exactly where it was coming from. Up there, on the second floor. Without a second thought, I raced up the stairs to the second story, and much like the first floor, there were rows of bookshelves stuffed beyond capacity. I looked to my right and saw an endless row of shelves with very little aura coming from them. Well, it ain't over there, I said with a raised brow, when suddenly the presence grew stronger coming from my left. I guess I know which direction I need to start looking in, I thought. Each aisle I passed, the presence grew heavier to the point I was having difficulty breathing. That was until I'd came face to face with the source of the overwhelming aura. In the middle of the library's second floor lounge lied a massive platinum-feathered dragon. Murmur, my boy, it's so wonderful to see you again, although for you, this is the first time we're getting to meet. Yo, what the fuck? Is that a dragon? Like an actual fucking dragon? I knew this place was wild, but this takes it to the next freaking level. My thoughts and synapses were firing at an insane rate. I was certain that my head was going to explode from information overload. Wah ha 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 ha. The dragon let out a thunderous laugh. That reaction never gets old. You want to know who I am? Why, you and I are here, don't you? The dragon looked me deep in the eyes. Its eyes were a dazzling sapphire blue that illuminated his line of sight. Its feathers, although appearing soft and delicate, were razor-sharp upon further examination, and it had two sets of curved horns on its head. This is a real dragon. I know you're curious, it said with a smile in its eyes. After all, I'm curious, and you and I are cut from the same cloth. Pardon? I asked, cocking my head to the side. Oh, Kronos hasn't told you? The dragon got up and trotted towards me, plopping down and sinking its head to be eye level with mine. My boy, I am your grandfather. It was like his words were a freight train that collided with a brick wall. Perhaps this form is too imposing for a mere child. I figured you'd want to see your Ola's granddad in his true form. The dragon, or rather my grandfather's form, changed to that of a young man with skin a shade or two lighter than mine, and an extremely loose-curled, light blue, almost sliver afro. He wore a regal, fur-lined, light blue cloak that covered his entire body, and he didn't look too much older than the youngest of my parents' attendants. Was this man really my grandfather, I thought? Indeed I am, my alleged grandfather whistled. I can't read your mind, but you and I have been doing the same song and dance for eons now. I've just grown comfortable. He smiled at me, and although I was suspicious of him, I couldn't deny the obvious family resemblance he has to my father. Wait, what do you mean we've done this before? I asked, furrowing my brow. Those are spoilers, the man said. Besides, I promised older you that I wouldn't give too much away. Just a little bit you need to be fully convinced that this is where you were meant to be. Chapter 3, New Game Plus 3. Where I'm meant to be? I asked. And how can I trust you? I wasn't exactly in the mood to become dragon food, so I had to play my cards right. Ouch, grandson! The man clenched his chest to symbolize agony. I see you inherited your father's skepticism. I just hope you didn't get his disdain for me, too. My thoughts were conflicted. If this man was really my father's father, then why does he look so young? Now that I think about it, Dad is a bit goofy and over the top. Maybe this man really is my grandfather. Ah, yes. The man clasped my hands and gave me a pinched smile. Me and your old man are more alike than you think, murmur. Come on, there's so much I need to teach you. He'd grabbed my hand, and the two of us made our way to the top floor of the library. I looked down, and I could spot my mother and siblings still frozen in time. "Wicked skill, huh?" the alleged grandfather asked with a scrunched nose. "You know I can teach it to you, the time-stop ability." His lips curled into a devious smile. It almost felt like I were making a deal with the devil. "You can do that? I mean, you can teach me how to do that?" "How, grandfather?" I asked. I'm not sure exactly when, but at some point during this little interaction, I found myself growing more comfortable with the man. "Oh, that's easy," grandfather said as he tousled my hair. "But before I do, Myrlin, do you know what a signature is?" Yeah? I raised a brow. "A unique script, usually handwritten, can be used to identify, validate, or authenticate documents." "Such an academic answer," grandfather chuckled as he furrowed his brow. "I mean, you're not wrong, but it means something else in this world. A signature is a unique ability tied to one's soul, and to cast the signature, you must pull from your cache the well of mana that is found within you. It's finally happening. I'm finally getting what I'd been asking for, a place where I belong, a world in which I fit in perfectly." My grandfather crouched down and extended his arms out to me for a hug, and instinctively I latched onto him. "Please, grandfather, please teach me. I'll do anything, anything." I was crying. I'd cried like I'd never cried before. Was this what it felt like to finally find your tribe? I didn't care what stipulation this came with. I knew, deep in my cache, this was meant for me. Grandfather gave me a gentle smile before picking me up. "Don't worry, my boy. You'll learn how to do it sooner than you think. As a matter of fact, this is one of 3 inherited signatures, so you learning it was inevitable." "Inherited signatures?" I interrogated. "Yep, one of 3. Grandfather burped as he sat me on his lap. Even with his form resembling that of a teenager, he's still very much an old man. "And lucky for you, you get to start with the hardest one." And just like that, I was in a foul mood. "Are you serious?" "Hey now," grandfather whined. "It's not that difficult to grasp. Look, do as I do." Grandfather sat us both on the ground, legs crossed, placing his forearms on top his knees. "Do as I do, Myrlin," he said, while closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. Apprehensive and skeptical, still, I did as I was told. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath in, and what I saw I couldn't even put into words. I could attempt, but I don't think that would really do it justice. But when I closed my eyes, I saw a light, not like flickering strobes or anything cliche like that, but it was more like neon signage. One could even call it neon script. "Whoa, what is this?" I marveled, keeping my eyes shut. "Is this magic?" "That's right, Murmur." A visage of grandfather appeared before me. "This is what mages see when they learn a new spell. We call this a signature, and in order to activate this power, the mage must pull mana from their cache and scribe their name. This is the foundation of casting spells in this realm, and for those that call it home." It was already trippy that I was freely having a conversation with him while time was at a standstill, but now I'm seeing his force ghost, I thought. Grandfather's visage approached one of the neon signs. The color of the light was a soft electric blue, and although I couldn't quite read yet, I knew what it said. Myrlin Samael Wilt. When I read it aloud, I felt a massive surge of mana rush into my cache. It was painful, like my insides were being grinded in a food processor. "That's it, Murmur," my grandfather coaxed and cradled me. "You're almost done. Just a few seconds." What is he talking about, I thought. It feels like my organs are exploding right now. Why is this happening to me? At that very moment, the pain completely stopped. The burning and ripping of my insides completely came to a halt, and what was even more strange, I felt better. I felt stronger. "Well, Murmur," grandfather asked as he held me in his arms, "how you feeling?" "Genuinely, I feel amazing. I feel lighter, more nimble. I feel stronger and more capable of accomplishing my goals," I thought. "But the most important thing I feel right now is intelligence. I feel far more intelligent now than I'd ever felt, whether it be in this life or my previous." "I feel a lot of things, grandfather," I said, trying to catch my breath. "But the one emotion that I must express to you is gratitude." I promptly sprang out of my grandfather's arms and wrapped my arms around his torso. "I don't really know what you did, how you did it, but thank you for being the first person to teach me this wonderful phenomenon called magic. I know I looked a mess, crying like the snot-nosed little twerp as I appear on the outside, but these tears weren't coming from the child version of me. These weren't a child's tears flowing down my face. They were my tears, my soul's tears. My soul was finally happy. It was finally getting what it had been longing for. There it is, Grandfather chuckled and returned the hug. It never gets old the moment you realize we're kindred. You're welcome, child. Now, I don't have much time left, so I want to spend as much time teaching you about your new signature. I pulled away from Grandfather and placed a hand above my diaphragm. It was warm, and the heat it was emitting pulsated at a steady rhythm. Grandfather, my chest is hot. What is this? Crouching down, Grandfather placed his hand over mine. That is where your cache is located. It's right behind your diaphragm. Whenever you channel mana, your cache will exert mana into your mana veins, which run parallel with your blood vessels. To cast a spell, you'll need to use the mana in combination with your name, usually writing the name in the middle of the air. This is called scribing. I looked down at my hands, trying my hardest to consume as much of what Grandfather was teaching me, because for some reason, I felt like this was going to be the last time I'd probably get to see him. I redirected my attention to my grandfather, and he continued his lecture. We spent what felt like days, maybe even weeks, going over the signature I'd inherited, as well as getting to know each other. I learned quite a bit from him, and the signature that I'd inherited from him was the very time stop ability that was active. He'd call it Solid World, and it controls the carbon dioxide in the air, allowing the user to slip into a suspended world. I wasn't too fond of the name, though, so naturally I had to change it and make it my own, and I decided on the name Temporal Stasis. It's simple and straightforward, plus I won't feel weird saying it out loud. At least the name I gave it wasn't embarrassing. You'll need to continuously meditate and use the signature in order for your body to fully adapt to the signature, Grandfather lectured. In your current state, I'd say that you can slip into suspended time 3 times a day, each for about 2 seconds. And that's just my guess after you just received the bestowal. So, I know that you'll be moving freely in here in no time. I could feel Grandfather's heartbeat through his chest. Are you okay, Grandfather? Oh, no need to worry, my boy, he said with a smile. Grandfather stood up and tousled my hair. I just overstayed my welcome is all. I'd best be making my exit. This was something of a bittersweet moment. On one hand, I didn't really know the person that was claiming to be my grandfather. However, I couldn't deny the obvious similarities, not just between the two of us, but with him and my father as well. And I wanted to learn more from him. I craved it, like a fiend that needs their daily fix. I wanted to learn as much as I could from him. I should be more grateful and appreciative. Grandfather began to emit a bright light and suddenly morphed back into his dragon form. It's going to be some time before I see you again, but I left you with someone I trust in my stead. Grandfather began to turn around and walk toward the source of the light. He can be a bit of a brat sometimes. Don't be too hard on him. And murmur, never forget. Protect the ones you cherish deeply. I was holding back tears, and despite that I was doing my best to stay stoic. I promise, Grandpa, I choked. Whenever you use that signature, Grandfather added, I'll be right behind you, as a part of me resides in the ability, so this isn't a goodbye, it's more like a see you soon. You mean it? I asked, catching my breath from crying. See you soon, little prince. Grandfather placed his forehead on mine. See you soon. And in an instant he was gone with no trace. The emotions were raw and overwhelming. I just met my grandfather, and to make it even better, he's a fucking dragon. I was a mixed bag of feelings at the moment. I was now aware of mana and my signature. I have a blood relation to a dragon and the ability to stop time. I felt like every anime fan's favorite overpowered character, but I did promise Grandfather that I would hone my skills. As much as I'd like to slack off, it's imperative that I improve temporal stasis. Once Grandfather vanished, the color in the library faintly returned, almost as if the grayscale nature of the suspended time was thawing out. As such, I ventured my way back to my family, who were none the wiser of my absence. Was it wrong of me to have that interaction with Grandfather? How do I even know that was my grandfather? Well, that second question is a definite given, but I feel like learning that signature was a taboo of some kind. By the time I made it back to my family, the color had completely returned and time resumed. Mother was still in the middle of her tale. And in order to defeat the Umbrazin, the 7 Asura lords had no choice but to trap the vile creature inside of the husk of the Dragoness, and then sealed the husk inside the true void, the thin, imaginary line that connects the sky with the land or sea. The lounge grew quiet before the tension broke due to Monspeed's loud snoring. Geez, milady, Jade shivered. Lord Kronos was right. That story gives me the willies. Yes, it is rather dark, Mother said as she gave us a smile, but it reminds me that our great mother didn't leave us here alone. Deep down, I know the descendants of the 7 Asura lords will quell her rage. We didn't stay in the library much longer after that. In fact, both Monspeed and Minerva fell asleep. I, on the other hand, had adrenaline coursing through my veins, and I was eager to start training this new signature I received. The ability to stop time with a single thought is some next-level power, like Dio Brando from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or Homura Akimi from Puella Magi Madoka Magica. This power I have, I must protect my loved ones. Once I made it back to my room, I leaped in my bed and clenched my pillow in excitement. I can't believe I just met a fucking dragon, I squealed. In my previous life, I was obsessed with anything fantasy, and this world is honestly like something ripped right out of one of my dreams. And even though things in this world may seem complex and hard to grasp, one can find unraveling the complexity is just rudimentary. Grandfather said that I could activate temporal stasis 3 times in a day for about 2 seconds each time. I pondered. I'm going to have to lock in if I want to be someone that can protect his family. Chapter 4. New Game Plus 4. Wilt Manor, Garini, Garyudora, Rito Shangri-La, 12 Yangsari 12 R7X. It's been 13 years since I've been living my new life as Myrlin, and about 6 years since my grandfather bestowed me with his signature. Since then, I've gotten a firm grasp on my limit. Initially, I could only stop time for 2 seconds, and I was limited to that to 3 times a day. However, every day since then, I maintained a strict meditation regimen, and the results were finally starting to bloom. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes before saying, temporal stasis. Upon the phrase, I felt a wave of mana pulsating from within my cache, and my hair began to glow that same soft electric blue color all those years ago. I use each pulse as a time marker, which means the more pulses I feel, the longer I've been in suspended time. 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. I released my ability, and my hair reverted back to its original midnight purple color as the color filled the room around me. It looks like I can push it to a full minute now, and on top of that, I think I can spam the signature a couple of times before I'm down for the count. From my daily meditation and training, I've come to the understanding that my temporal stasis signature controls the carbon dioxide molecules in the atmosphere, causing a lapse in one's perception of time. And because the signature's foundation is carbon, it means that I have an elemental affinity for earth magic. Shortly after my grandfather bestowed his signature onto me, I underwent my innate signatures awakening, a simple sand signature. I honestly wasn't expecting anything flashy or over the top. However, the simplicity of sand left me desiring for at least something a little more destructive. Nevertheless, I spent every single day increasing my mana output and my control over my elemental affinity. A small head start in this new magic-filled life can definitely make a difference, I thought. Bang! There was a slam at my bedroom door, and before I could answer it, Minerva and Monspeed came rushing in. The former was chasing the latter. I quickly snatched Monspeed by his shirt collar. Explain, now! We were racing, and your room was a shortcut, and Monspeed began with a quivering lip. I looked over at Minerva, and all she could do was shrug her shoulders. It was clear to me that Speed thought I was going to yell at him, and he wasn't entirely wrong, but I know how sensitive he can be. I let out a long-winded sigh before meeting my brother at eye level. Speed, you have nothing to worry about. I'm not upset, just annoyed, which doesn't mean it's the end of the world. My younger brother looked at me with these giant puppy dog eyes. He was about to start crying, and I wasn't in the mood to hear Rubella attempt to calm him down by scolding him. Speed, come on. I grabbed my brother by the shoulders and gave him a good shake. We're supposed to be big bros for Meliodas and Baby Bo. I stuck my arm out and flexed, showing off what little child muscles I had, which seemed to have worked because Monspeed was mimicking my current pose. Big bros, Speed sniffled as he flexed. Speed, you're such a crybaby, Minerva announced. There was a moment of silence before the three of us erupted in a fit of giggles as I chased them out of my room. I didn't think what Minerva said was harsh or anything, actually quite the opposite. Speed is very soft-spoken and gentle. He's the type of person that will listen to you talk for hours without putting in his 2 cents. The type of person that was perpetually naive, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. On the contrary, I find it to be a rather pure trait. 2 months prior, speaking of my siblings, I was surprised to find out that Minerva was also reincarnated in this world, which I guess kind of makes sense as to why I was able to speak English around her. She and I would frequently meet in our family's wine cellar to chat when no one was around. She told me that her name was Jamisha, and she was a culinary arts major in college. Yeah, it was some scary stuff, Minerva recounted, and that fucked up angel thing had been possessing my father for who knew how long, and when I finally came face to face with that monster, he came to save me. Who? I asked, not wanting my sister's story to end. Astaroth. The look in Minerva's eyes was one of nostalgia, the look a millennial gives when they see a relatable Instagram post. Do you know him? Did he send you here too? Minerva's questioning grew more frantic. I don't know who that is, I'm sorry, I answered, although the name does ring a bell. Perhaps one of the adults would know more about him. From your story, he sounds like a total badass.
Minerva Cosmina Wilt, present day. Speed and I made our way outside to the courtyard where we had our showdown. The two of us stood outside, the harsh sun beaming on our brown skin. I lifted my hand in the air before pointing it at my twin brother. Your time has come, fiend. You'll never catch me. Monspeed chuckled before the two of us rushed at each other. But before we could even attempt to finish playing, a woman stepped in between us. The air felt similar to how the atmosphere was back during the last moments of my previous life. This woman had quite literally stepped out of thin air. She wore a long white dress and had crimson ash-colored hair. She turned and directed her gaze on Monspeed, who was visibly frozen in place. The woman looked over her shoulder at me and placed 2 fingers on my forehead. What's happening? Is this my end now? I was just warming up to this place. 2 orbs of light appeared and the courtyard went dark.
Myrlin saw my wilt. As I roamed the halls of our manor, I'd run into my Uncle Ether. He and my father were twins, with the latter being the eldest. Uncle Ether sported a perfectly shaped navy blue afro with an equally neat beard. He didn't wear a kimono. Instead, it looked like he was wearing a military uniform. From what I know, Uncle Ether lives rather far from his brother, something about looking over some land or whatever. Oh, hey, Murmur, Uncle Ether called out. Great to see my favorite eldest nephew. How are you? Good afternoon, Uncle Ether. I gave my uncle a slight bow, maintaining pristine poise and elegance. I am well. How are you? Geez, kiddo, Uncle Ether chuckled as he patted my back. Loosen up. I know you live in this fancy manor, but you gotta learn to be less stiff and find the vibes. Find the vibes? I raised a brow. I feel like I'm back at my old university during Spirit Week. Could he use a more cringe phrase? My apologies, I mean my bad. It's just, I'm not around many kids my age, except for Minerva and Speed. I guess I just want to seem more grown up than what I appear. The two of us began to walk aimlessly through the manor. My uncle was extremely smart, and just as strong as my dad. He'd go on to tell me that he and my father formed an adventuring party, and they traveled throughout the entire realm. Exploring the entire realm, I repeated the phrase to myself. How does one optimize the time to pull off something of that nature? Oh, great mother, Uncle Ether chuckled and sighed. There you go again, talking like some sort of automated bookworm. Providing the solution to your question, answer found, just freaking do it, kid. The two of us looked at each other before we burst into laughter. My uncle was right, I really needed to loosen up. I feel like a robot that has to give out perfect answers, or otherwise people will start to get suspicious of me. My B-Unc, I chuckled as we continued our stroll. However, he'd stopped dead in his tracks, as if he'd just seen a ghost. Hey, Uncle Ether, what's the matter? In that moment, I felt a wicked and twisted wave of mana flood the hallway. The feeling was so overwhelming that I unintentionally vomited. "What is this?" I asked, trying to catch my breath. "Bad news, kiddo," Uncle Ether said as he picked me up and threw me over his shoulder. "Bad fucking news, trigger, gate. Clap!" In an instant, a sliding paper door appeared in front of us. The wood was a roasted chestnut color, and the panels were a plain beige, and when we stepped through the door, we were no longer in my manor's hallway. Instead, we found ourselves in another, separate hallway, one that was free from that wave of malevolent mana. My uncle put me down, and I was able to get a better look at my surroundings. The hallway was more like a Japanese outdoor corridor. The atmosphere was serene and tranquil, however, something was telling me not to get too caught up in the peace. "This way, Murmur." Uncle Ether motioned me to the door at the end of the corridor. When he opened it, though, I was met with a nightmarish sight. It wasn't a destination on the other side of the door. Instead, it was a swirling vortex or portal of some kind. I was apprehensive about going in, but my uncle was in a hurry, so he took it upon himself to scoop me up and jump into the portal, and when I opened my eyes, we were back at the manor's courtyard to be exact. "Uncle Ether, what was that?" I asked, both frantically and wide-eyed. The courtyard looked like something straight out of a psychological horror film. There were hedges set ablaze, and the once beautiful blue sky and golden sun that would beam down on us was now scorched with dark ashen clouds, and the one in the focal point of it all was a woman. Not just any woman, but one with a familiarity about her that I couldn't quite shake. The woman had deep mahogany skin, ash-crimson hair. It can't be. Is that the goddess? The gravity of this situation was finally starting to sink in, and that's when I'd noticed Minerva, lying unconscious in the middle of the courtyard. "Unc, look, it's Minerva!" "Yeah, I see her, Murmur," Uncle Ether acknowledged. "It's a spell called Gate. To keep it short, it's a teleporting spell. Now wait here. I have to keep our uninvited guest company until your father shows up." My uncle ran over to my sister, and with his shadows acting like something of a pocket, Uncle Ether placed Minerva inside, keeping her safe for the time being. "Myrlin, stay right here, and don't let your sister out of your sight." My uncle summoned the shadow that was carrying my sister. I nodded my head to confirm, and he returned the gesture with a smile while directing his attention to the woman. "Aspect of space, void missiles." My uncle clapped his hands together as several orbs of purple light manifested over his shoulder. The orbs stretched and grew into miniature rockets that, when it came in contact with its target, completely erased it out of existence. The woman's face was plastered with madness as she danced across the courtyard, expertly dodging each of my uncle's attacks, all while carrying an unconscious Monspeed. "Oh, is that the best you can do, false space lord?" The woman's crazed eyes locked onto mine, and without a doubt, it really was the goddess. Why is she acting like this? The thought came back to me right before she'd sent me to this world. She said that she would go on a rampage. Is this what she meant? Aspect of time, dismantle. I heard a booming voice from behind us, and a massive wave of sand came rushing toward the courtyard. It was my father. "Getting yourself killed like always, huh, Ether?" Father met with my uncle, and the two prepared themselves for battle. "What's this?" The crazed woman squinted. The false Time Lord and the false Space Lord, along with the failed Chaos Lord, reunited at last. "Bashi, that's enough!" Father cried out. I wasn't sure, but it sounded like he called the woman by her name. "You're not the Chaos Lord, and you didn't fail. I failed. I let you down. So if there is anyone to blame, you should blame me." The woman erupted into laughter as she set my brother to the side. "Oh, brother, of course I blame you. And I blame you too, Shangomaru. I blame both of you for not keeping your promise to keep me safe." There was another wave of mana, followed by a soundproof barrier preventing me from eavesdropping. What are they talking about? Did she say that she blames my father and uncle? And most importantly, why did she look like the goddess? Why did she call my father and uncle false lords? Nothing is making any sense. I was having a hard time collecting my thoughts. So much so, I found myself in the same position as my two siblings, knocked out due to overprocessing.